Tonight, a seismic move in Washington. In a joint operation, the FBI and DEA stormed the office of the U.S. Defense Secretary. Agents say the sweep netted 8 tons of narcotics and led to more than 3,800 arrests across the country. The fallout?
We tried to put this in perspective for you. This would be filling 4 18-wheelers. 4. All the drugs just in the last month that have been taken off the streets. 58,000 kilos of cocaine. Think about a big backyard swimming pool. That would fill 1.5 swimming pools. Just the powder cocaine that has been removed, saving lives this last month, thanks to all of these people around the table. 2,300 kilos of fentanyl powder and 2.1 million fentanyl pills off the streets. And as the president said, more than 1,000 illegal guns.
February 28th, 2025, 5:47 a.m. Titan Defense Systems corporate headquarters, Arlington, Virginia. FBI Special Agent Marcus Webb stood outside the gleaming glass tower housing one of America's top 10 defense contractors. The company held $8.4 billion in active Pentagon contracts, manufacturing everything from tactical communications equipment to armored vehicles for the U.S. military. But what FBI would discover when they breached those doors would expose the most shocking defense contractor corruption case in American history. Titan Defense wasn't just supplying the U.S. military, they were arming the Sinaloa Cartel. CEO Richard Blackwell and 45 company executives had spent 7 years running a dual operation. Legitimate military contracts on one side, and on the other, smuggling military-grade weapons to Mexican cartels while bringing back tons of drugs hidden in shipments labeled as returned equipment. Over 7 years, Titan Defense had shipped 2,400 assault rifles, 67 grenade launchers, 340 military-grade night vision systems, and 12 tons of explosives to the Sinaloa Cartel. And it worked flawlessly until a warehouse worker in Laredo, Texas noticed something wrong with a shipment of returned equipment and called ATF. That single phone call would unravel a criminal empire that had hidden inside one of America's most trusted defense contractors. Want to see how the FBI brought down a defense contractor CEO who armed drug cartels while holding billions in Pentagon contracts? Smash that like button and subscribe to Truth America right now, because this story exposes how corporate greed and cartel money corrupted a company trusted with America's defense. Titan would manufacture extra weapons beyond Pentagon orders, listing them as testing inventory or replacement units. These weapons would be shipped to Titan's Laredo, Texas facility, a legitimate warehouse the company used for border region military contracts. From there, trucks would transport weapons across the border to cartel contacts in Mexico, with paperwork showing returned equipment transfers to non-existent maintenance facilities. The cartel would pay partially in cash and partially in drugs. Returned shipments to Laredo would contain cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl hidden in crates labeled as returned tactical equipment or damaged systems for refurbishment. These drugs would be distributed through a network Blackwell established, with proceeds laundered through Titan's legitimate business operations. Over 7 years, the operation moved. In exchange, Blackwell's network received $2.1 billion, approximately $1.1 billion in cash and $1 billion in drugs at wholesale prices. The drugs were sold through distributors at a 300% markup, generating an additional $3 billion in revenue. Blackwell personally earned over $850 million from this operation, more than his legitimate CEO compensation over the same period. The investigation that would destroy Titan Defense began in September 2024 when a warehouse worker at Titan's Laredo facility, James Rodriguez, noticed something suspicious. A shipment labeled returned tactical communications equipment, damaged for refurbishment, was being unloaded, but the weight was wrong. Communications equipment doesn't weigh 400 pounds per crate. Rodriguez opened one of the crates. Inside, wrapped in plastic and hidden beneath a thin layer of actual damaged equipment, 80 kilograms of pure cocaine. He immediately contacted ATF and refused to speak with his Titan supervisors. Something told him they were involved. ATF agents arrived within hours. They found 12 crates in that shipment, each containing 60 to 80 kilograms of cocaine. Total, 840 kilograms worth approximately $30 million wholesale. The shipment documentation showed it originated from a maintenance facility in Monterrey, Mexico that, upon investigation, didn't exist. ATF coordinated with FBI, which opened a criminal investigation into Titan Defense Systems. In November 2024, FBI obtained federal warrants for wiretaps on Blackwell and his senior executives. The recorded conversations were damning. Discussions about special orders for alternative clients, references to Southern distribution, and cross-border logistics, coordination with individuals later identified as cartel operatives, and explicit conversations about drug shipments, with Blackwell personally discussing distribution and pricing. Federal Bureau of Investigation also traced weapons seized from cartels in Mexico. ATF maintains records of all firearms manufactured in the United States, including serial numbers. Agents discovered that 67 assault rifles seized from Sinaloa operations in Mexico over 2 years all had serial numbers registered to Titan Defense as testing inventory that was supposed to have been destroyed after evaluation. By January 2025, FBI had built an overwhelming case. March 1st, 2025, 5 a.m., FBI tactical teams, ATF agents, and Department of Defense investigators coordinated a massive multi-site raid operation. Simultaneous teams positioned at Titan Defense headquarters in Arlington, the Laredo warehouse, manufacturing facilities in Arizona and California, and the homes of 46 suspects. At precisely 5:47 a.m., FBI breached Titan's corporate headquarters. CEO Richard Blackwell arrived at his office early, as was his habit. He was reviewing shipment schedules when FBI agents entered with weapons drawn. Richard Blackwell, FBI, you're under arrest for weapons trafficking, drug smuggling, and conspiracy against the United States. Drop a comment below. Should defense contractors face stricter oversight to prevent this kind of corruption? How do we stop companies from using military contracts as cover for criminal operations? And if you haven't subscribed to Truth America yet, hit that button. We expose corporate corruption that mainstream media ignores. Subscribe now. Across Titan's headquarters, 23 executives and employees were arrested at their desks, in conference rooms, and in parking lots as they arrived for work. FBI seized computers, documents, financial records, and encrypted communications devices. In Blackwell's office safe, $4.7 million in cash and detailed ledgers documenting 7 years of weapons shipments and drug payments. At the Laredo warehouse, ATF arrested 15 workers as they prepared to unload a shipment that had arrived from Mexico overnight. Inside the crates labeled returned equipment, 680 kilograms of cocaine and 240 kilograms of methamphetamine. The drugs were seized, the workers arrested, and the entire facility shut down. By noon, all 46 suspects were in federal custody. The raids had been executed flawlessly. Not one escaped, not one destroyed significant evidence. Department of Defense immediately suspended all Titan contracts pending investigation, freezing $8.4 billion in active agreements. The company's stock, traded on NASDAQ, collapsed from $127 per share to $3 within hours as news broke. March 2nd, 2025, Attorney General Pamela Bondi held a joint press conference with FBI Director Christopher Wray, ATF Director Stephen Dettelbach, and Department of Defense Inspector General Robert Storch. Yesterday, federal law enforcement arrested the CEO and 45 executives of Titan Defense Systems, one of America's largest defense contractors, for smuggling military-grade weapons to the Sinaloa cartel while using the same logistics network to import massive quantities of drugs into the United States. For 7 years, this company betrayed the trust placed in it by the Department of Defense and the American people. They armed our enemies while poisoning our communities. This is corporate corruption at its absolute worst. and every individual involved will face the maximum penalties under federal law. The charges were comprehensive and severe: weapons trafficking, international drug smuggling, conspiracy, money laundering, defrauding the United States government, and violating the Arms Export Control Act. Blackwell alone faced over 300 criminal counts carrying potential sentences totaling 400+ years in federal prison. The evidence was overwhelming. At sentencing in September 2025, Richard Blackwell received 8 consecutive life sentences plus 200 years. The judge's words captured the enormity of his betrayal. "You were trusted with contracts to supply America's military forces. Instead, you armed America's enemies. You supplied cartels with military-grade weapons that were used to kill Mexican citizens, American law enforcement, and rival traffickers. You brought tons of drugs into American communities. You did all this while enriching yourself to the tune of $850 million. You are not a businessman. You are a traitor to everything American defense contractors are supposed to represent. You will die in federal prison." The 6 other executives received sentences ranging from 40 years to life. All assets purchased with illegal proceeds, homes, vehicles, investments, art collections, were seized and forfeited, totaling over $180 million. Titan Defense Systems filed for bankruptcy within weeks. The company's Pentagon contracts were permanently terminated. Its facilities were sold to competing defense contractors. Over 14,000 innocent employees lost their jobs, though most were hired by companies that absorbed Titan's legitimate contracts. The Titan brand, once respected in defense circles, became synonymous with corporate betrayal. The scandal triggered comprehensive reforms in defense contractor oversight. New DoD regulations require independent audits of all contractors' supply chains, enhanced vetting of executives, random inspections of manufacturing facilities, and GPS tracking of all weapons shipments. Contractors found violating arms control laws now face immediate contract termination and criminal prosecution. Congress held hearings examining how a major contractor could arm cartels for 7 years without detection. The uncomfortable truth: Pentagon oversight focused on contract performance and cost, not on whether contractors were illegally selling weapons on the side. The new oversight regime aims to prevent future Titan defense situations. President Trump addressed the convictions during a speech on law and order. A defense contractor CEO was convicted of arming Mexican drug cartels while holding billions in Pentagon contracts. He made $850 million selling weapons to our enemies. He brought tons of drugs into America, and he will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. This is what happens when corporate greed meets cartel money. We will not tolerate it. We will prosecute it, and we will eliminate it. By November 2025, investigators had traced Titan-supplied weapons to cartel operations across Mexico. The 2,400 assault rifles, 67 grenade launchers, and other equipment-armed cartel enforcers in Sinaloa, Jalisco, and other states. Some weapons were recovered after being used in attacks on Mexican police and military. Others remained in cartel arsenals. Mexican authorities worked with ATF to track and seize Titan-supplied weapons, but many will never be recovered. The whistleblower, James Rodriguez, received $12 million from the federal government's Whistleblower Reward Program, a percentage of the $180 million in assets forfeited. He also received protective custody, as cartels had placed a bounty on him. His single phone call to ATF had dismantled a $2.1 billion criminal empire. Richard Blackwell sits in ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison in Colorado, in 23-hour lockdown. The man who once commanded a room full of Pentagon generals and ran a $12 billion company now spends his days in an 8x10 cell. His fortune is gone, his company is destroyed, and he'll never see freedom again. If you believe Truth America is essential to exposing how corporations betray America for profit, then like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. Share this with everyone who's tired of corruption hiding behind corporate respectability and Pentagon contracts. This is why we exist, to bring you the truth about how greed and cartel money infiltrate even our most trusted institutions. This is Truth America, exposing the corruption that destroys our security from within. We'll see you in the next one.